Right now we have the list of posts, but if we click on one of them, we get a 404 error because we haven't created the page yet. Let's get to it. To develop the page where we display a post, we're going to reuse a lot of what we've already done for the listing page. That is both the getPost API and its model. And you might be wondering, why is that? I'm only loading a single post here. This is because of how Next.js works. At build time, we're going to fetch all the posts and generate a page for each one with its details, so the process is very similar to that of the listing page. Now, in order to generate a page for each post, in the page's file name, we'll specify that it should use a slug parameter, or we can name it something else, and that slug will be the name of the post. So, if we have one called my-first-post, for example, the generated page will be my-first-post.html, and we'll create one for each available post. Let's get to it. Let's create the post folder. And inside it, just another one called slug. And we simply and easily create the file page.tsx, just like that. With this, we're declaring a dynamic root for each post, like post my first post, for example. This name here, slug, you can name it whatever you like. Since we want the HTML for all the posts to be generated at build time, we're going to use Next.js's generate static params function to generate the slugs for each of the posts. So we add the necessary imports. We create the format slug function just like we did in the list to format the post name so that it's a valid slug. As an alternative, we could have created a slug field directly in the content island model for each post and used it here in the code. Finally, we create the asynchronous function generate static params, which calls getPosts and generates an array of objects with the slug of each one, formatting it like this. Now let's create the component for the page with a temporary layout to check that it works as expected. This temporary layout will help us visualize the component's structure and ensure that all elements are correctly positioned. We add the interface for the props with the slug parameter, which is crucial for identifying the specific page content. The slug parameter is of type string, allowing us to pass unique identifiers for each page. In the latest versions of Next.js, which is a popular React framework, the params are received asynchronously, meaning they are fetched in the background without blocking the main thread, so we need to add an await keyword to be able to access them properly. We're going to use this prop in the component itself, which is a crucial part of our application. We extract the params from the props and bring in the slug synchronously, ensuring that the data is available when needed. We go back to the main function to continue processing, to request all the posts in order to retrieve all the data for each one. Although it seems like we're calling the same endpoint too many times, Next.js optimizes this and only makes one API call per post and caches it, so it's not a problem. And finally, we filter the post we want to carefully showcase by the specific slug that we receive through the params. Let's indeed add an exclamation mark at the end to indicate that this will already come with data and avoid issues with TypeScript. Finally, we're ultimately going to return the component with each of the fields to see if it works. We create an article, navigate to the detailed view of one of them, and start adding each of the fields. For example, an H1 with the title, you can see it there, and we can gradually add each of the fields. For example, the post date, the author, the image, the summary, and the actual content in Markdown. And while we're at it, let's make it look nice with some styles. We add our page.module.css, paste in the styles to the document, and we're going to update the HTML to use them in our project. We add the import of the classes for better styling and functionality to enhance the user experience. page.module.css. We are formatting the post date in a similar manner to how we did it in the list, and we'll gradually update the HTML. Let's wrap all of this in a div with style, as previously mentioned. A class name, using as always container, and in this case classes.background. We wrap all of this to the div element, which serves as a container for the content, and applies the background class from the classes object to style the component. Additionally, this div is going to need us to pass it a CSS variable through the style attribute, which will be called post_image. This is the image of the post that we're pulling from the data, and it will be used as an image with the CSS URL method. So, to avoid issues with, for example, incorrect image loading or display, it is important to ensure that the image URL is correctly specified and accessible. TypeScript. We can type this entire object as an object of type React CSS properties. As I said earlier on this topic, this is just to pass the value to this CSS variable. We continue adding classes to enhance and style our article further. Class name and classes article respectively. It's starting now indeed, looking a bit better overall. We remove what's left over from rest of it. Fields, and start adding a header with the date and the title of the post. The header serves to inform readers about the context and timing of the post, ensuring clarity and relevance. We add a div, which is a container element that helps in structuring the web page with the content of the article. This div is crucial for organizing the layout and ensuring that the content is displayed correctly. We can directly place post content here, which includes all the necessary information and insights intended for the readers, and close the div to maintain the integrity of the web page structure. There you can clearly see the markdown visibly in the document, and finally a concluding section or footer to indicate who wrote this article, in this case the author, which we can get from post author, and here at the end it will be displayed. As we can see, we have the same problem as before. With the markdown, we're going to need to use the marked library to transform the code. And while we're at it, let's install another library that does syntax highlighting for when we paste code into the markdown. For example, in the second post, in that markdown, there's a piece of code written here, JavaScript code. So let's give it a more visually appealing style and make it look more appealing. For that, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to install the highlight.js library. Once it's installed, we update the component. We import the market library here in order to successfully achieve our goal, highlight.js, and a style sheet for the highlighting. We completely transform the post content in a seamless and efficient manner using marked. We effectively add the highlighting for the code, and finally, we store everything in a variable called post content. And we simply pass this transformation directly to the content of the div using the same field we used earlier. Here, the dangerous set inner HTML with the post content in a secure and efficient manner. We self-close the div, and that's it. There we have it. Everything is now completely laid out with code, highlighting and fully responsive and absolutely effective.